Army and Chief of Staff Eisenhower visits with GI patients in the hospital at Miami, Florida. Here for a vacation and medical checkup, the affable Ike seems to enjoy playing hooky from affairs of state. Holding his first all-out press conference since coming south, the general takes up a matter with which he has had considerable trouble. His reply is typically in the Eisenhower vein.
Ever since I have first heard my name connected with possible political office, I have consistently declined to consider or discuss such a contingency. My mind has not changed with respect to that subject one iota. I am a soldier. I belong to the Army. And the Army is truly national. It lives to serve the nation and nobody else, no party, no special group.
Replying to a pertinent question, the answer is likewise direct.
The doctors brought me to Florida because they said they wanted me to go to a place where there was warm sunshine during the winter and where I'd get plenty of exercise and could be constantly available to the doctors for their tests and the other treatment they wanted to give me. I must say I have had about as many pictures taken internally here as I seem to be having taken externally today.
Capitol Hill in Washington is again the nation's focal point as the 80th Congress convenes during one of the most crucial periods in the nation's history. The Republican-controlled Congress takes the helm in the House. Halleck of Indiana, in his role as majority leader, hands the gavel to Joe Martin of Massachusetts, first Republican speaker since 1931. Following the Republican landslide of 1946, the GOP now possesses a clear working majority in both branches of Congress. A short time after convening, the Speaker takes his place and receives the applause of his colleagues. Mr. Martin is then sworn in to the high office that is his. He is faced by 430 members of the new House, whom he in turn swears in. It is among these men that many of the finance bills will originate, bills that will have a vital bearing on America's economy during the coming years. Senator Barkley, now minority leader, arrives, as does Senator-elect Bilbo, storm center of a controversy which raged over his seating and threatened for a time to block Senate organization. A compromise deferred action on his case. Retiring Secretary of State James F. Burns arrives at the State Department after handing his resignation to President Truman. Mr. Burns, who is leaving because of ill health, established a brilliant record of public service. His leadership in the peace conferences and in guiding our policy in the United Nations will be chronicled by future historians. The nation owes him a debt of eternal gratitude.
A nation and a world watch. Once only in 1100 years of British kingship has there been such a day. An heiress presumptive to the throne marries the man of her choice. Lieutenant Philip Mountbatten, now His Royal Highness the Duke of Edinburgh, leaves. As the 21-year-old princess arrived at Westminster Abbey, it was her moment too. For Elizabeth, this was of necessity something more. From this hour, a new life begins. Mingled with her private happiness is the sure knowledge that she must now enter a widening field of public duty and responsibility. And now they are man and wife. From the palace balcony, Elizabeth and her husband waved to the cheering crowds. Excitement was at its peak as the King, the Queen, Queen Mary, and other members of the royal family came out to join them.
Field Marshal Montgomery, Chief of the British Imperial General Staff, makes a 5-day visit to Moscow and goes sightseeing in the wintry Soviet capital. Viscount Montgomery is on a goodwill tour. Accompanied by his Soviet hosts and members of the British staff, the hero of El Alamein finds plenty to interest him as he inspects the glories of Russia's public buildings. Monty's visit is not purely social, however. An interview with Premier Stalin takes place in the Kremlin, where important affairs concerning military collaboration and Marshal Montgomery's recent visit to the United States were discussed. Later, Monty acquires a new winter outfit, a fur-lined military dress greatcoat and a lamb's wool hat, gifts of Field Marshal Alexander Vasilevsky, head of the Russian General Staff. Despite a recent illness, Marshal Vasilevsky sees Monty off for London, highly impressed by his grand tour of the Soviet military and political headquarters.
Appearing before the Senate Committee on Labor and Public Welfare, John L. Lewis, head of the United Mine Workers, asserts there is no way of preventing nationwide coal strikes under our present form of government. Mr. Lewis, who with the Miners' Union has lately been heavily fined for contempt by the government, seems unrepentant as he testifies.
If the government would cease using a blackjack to beat the miners into submission, well, the coal operators take the profits. The United States manager at every coal mine is the same man who was the manager there in private operation. He's operating for the account of the coal company. The coal company gets the profits. The coal company gets every dollar which he can chisel out of some coal miner through a false interpretation of the contract or oppressive management tactics. So why wouldn't the coal operators be satisfied under these things? The government is acting as their muscle man.
Again, Mr. Lewis appears to breathe defiance.
I will submit these questions, but I want to make it very clear these are not all of the questions I desire to ask Senator Brewster. And furthermore, that when I entered into this controversy yesterday, I was assured that I would be allowed to cross-question through the committee. That is, that I could ask you questions and you in turn would ask them of Senator Brewster. Now, Senator Brewster's story as related here yesterday is a pack of lies, and I can tear it apart if allowed to cross-question him. And it is unfair to place me in the position of having my integrity questioned and not being allowed to cross-examine Senator Brewster.
All right, you understood that, and the record is clear, that you could submit questions through the committee. Now, have you any questions?
Yes, but these are the preliminary questions and not all of them by any means. Yesterday you told me I would be accorded the same privilege as the senator from Maine or anyone else here. Now, will you give me the questions in advance that you want to ask me while I am here? Or will you give them to any third neutral party? Is it not true that you are going to propound the questions for me as I testify and based upon what I testify as I go along? Are you willing to set aside the questions in advance which you will ask me?
Mr. Hughes.
Bringing joy and laughter to thousands of youthful citizens, Bud Abbott and Lou Costello dedicate the new Lou Costello Jr. Youth Foundation in Los Angeles. Besides their extensive donations, the two jovial movie stars have given unsparingly of their time to make this deluxe play center and clinic one of the finest in the country. It's free. It's all free. Well, sometimes. Watch the waistline, Lou. Yes, that milk bar is really buzzing. What's buzzing, cousin? Why, Mr. Costello's buzzing. But seriously, it's all free to the kids. Sports run through tennis, badminton, swimming, and softball, and of course, the manly art of self-defense. All we hope is that Lou knows how to roll with the punches. Anyway, here's the winners, and just what we were afraid of. At the Rancho Boyeros Airport in sunny Cuba, our film star Joan Fontaine and her husband, producer William Dozier. And the lush tropic scenery of Havana calls for a sightseeing tour of the island republic, which charms the charming Miss Fontaine and brings out her admirers. But the West Indies hold out other allures, and the couple leave for a Caribbean cruise. Bon voyage!
The ladies take a powder one day a week, while the men folks take over the sacred precincts of the beauty shops. Some fugitives from a microphone, including hillbilly Zeke Manners, get in a few fast licks. Peter Lind Hayes plays the big bad wolf and takes off for a flyer under the dryer. This beauty deadfall is equipped with everything but retractable landing gear and pontoons. Art Linkletter plunks for a permanent and gets mired in a lot of tonsorial spaghetti. Still in there punching is Peter Lind Hayes, who is chewing his fingernails right down to his elbows. And can they dish the dirt? Well, I wouldn't want this repeated, but have you heard?
Ladies and gentlemen, I've been asked to show you some photographs. They're pictures taken in Europe, India, China, and other countries. Pictures showing starvation conditions and the effect of hunger on men, women, and children. I don't think it'd be necessary for me to show you the pictures. You've seen them all in your newspapers, posters, newsreels. You know that this starvation condition exists as the aftermath of a very destructive war. I just want to remind you that you can do something to help. All of us here in this country can help. By cutting down the consumption of wheat and meat, we can save millions of lives. Now let's do it the American way. Let's do it voluntarily. Save wheat, save meat, save the peace.
The title of this style cavalcade is From Bustles to Blue Jeans, and supposedly shows what effect a relaxation of fashion dictates had upon the mind of the pretty college lassie. Well, we won't quibble with the gals, heaven to Betsy, no. I always thought they wore what they darn well pleased anyway. All us men can do is say, it's pretty, and let it go at that. Who knows, Grandpappy might have been shocked when the gals went swimming in that. It was daring in his day, and speaking of fashions, we'd have as much trouble getting the modern miss to tuck in her shirt as we would have had getting her gymnast predecessor to wear blue jeans. What do you say, girls?
Marcel Cerdan, French middleweight contender, has a most unusual sparring partner. Maurice Chevalier by name and no fool by nature. When Cerdan works out at the Tremont Athletic Club, who helps get him in prize ring form? Why, Monsieur Chevalier, exactement. And he shows Marcel a thing or two, oui, about boxing, yes? Or is it no? Yes, no. The famous French movie star is light on his feet, despite his years. But he sings a different tune when Cerdan connects. He can't be sure when the middleweight might forget himself and really let fly. So long, Sherry. George Murphy, Ronald Reagan, and Robert Montgomery are among the top-flight movie actors testifying before the House Un-American Activities Committee in Washington. Appearing before the inquiry board investigating communist infiltration in Hollywood, producer Sam Wood wastes no words condemning the Red Party line and its sympathizers.
No, sir, I haven't. I think that you have to awaken the public to the fact that they are here and what they're doing. And I think the underground, of course, they've always got reasons for not doing anything to them. I mean, they're underground or they're a liberal. And they thump their chests and they're liberals. But if you mention that you're opposed to the Communist Party, then you're anti-labor, you're anti-Semitic, you're anti-Negro, and you always end up with fascist. But they never start that until they find out that you're opposed to the Communist Party. So if you wanted to drop the rompers and look, you'd find the hammer and sickle on the rear end, I think. Thank you very much, Mr. Wood.
One of the strongest advocates of a national communist purge is Adolphe Menjou, veteran screen actor. The subversive forces who have tried unsuccessfully to color the motion picture screen with red propaganda meet a strong opponent in Mr. Menjou. Lining up with the majority of the movie industry, he denounces the suspected elements.
I believe that 95% of the people in California are decent, honest American citizens. The Communist Party is a minority, but a dangerous minority. I believe that the entire nation should be alerted to its menace today. I think that Mr. Wyszynski and Mr. Molotov have done the most magnificent job of awakening a great many people. The more information the American people get, the more they will realize it, the more they will turn against it. It is completely against the un-American feeling, this communistic thing. I believe I would move to the state of Texas if it ever came here, because I think the Texans would kill them on sight.
The Capitol awaits the arrival of President Truman to deliver his message. He shakes hands with Senator Vandenberg, President Pro Tem of the Senate, and Speaker Martin, both presiding over the joint session. Each receives a copy of the President's address. Mr. Truman confronts a Congress heavily weighted by the opposition. He delivers his message on the State of the Union.
In the effort to bring about a sound and equitable price structure, each group of our population has its own responsibilities. It is up to industry not only to hold the line on existing prices, but to make reductions whenever profits justify such action. It is up to labor to refrain from pressing for unjustified wage increases that will force increases in the price level. And it is up to government to do everything in its power to encourage high volume production. For that is what makes possible good wages, low prices, and reasonable profits. What we do or fail to do at home affects not only ourselves, but millions throughout the world. If we are to fulfill our responsibilities to ourselves and to other peoples, we must make sure that the United States is sound economically, socially, and politically. This is an age when unforeseen attack could come with unprecedented speed. We must be strong enough to defeat and thus forestall any such attack. For these reasons, we need well-equipped, well-trained armed forces, and we must be able to mobilize rapidly our resources in men and material for our own defense should the need arise. Let us have the will and the patience to do this job together. May the Lord strengthen us in our faith. May He give us wisdom to lead the peoples of the world in His ways of peace.
The torch of civil war flames in Indochina. Homes are ablaze as French troops clear the outskirts of Hanoi after a siege of weeks by Vietnamese. The city, attacked by rebels following the breakdown of negotiations for independence, was cut off in a lightning attack. Retreating insurgents leave a trail of fire as they flee before French colonial forces, heavily reinforced by units of the Foreign Legion. Jeeps rush help as mopping up operations proceed and snipers are hunted down. Through the burning streets, French troops drive out rebels fighting rear guard actions. Hundreds of casualties on both sides fall as the fight for Hanoi takes on the proportions of a major engagement. Arms left by Japanese following their occupation of Indochina permit the Vietnamese to offer stiff resistance as they retreat, leaving their dead by the score. Mute evidence of the ferocity of the fight. Also, they leave their slogans, "Down with French rule." During the battle areas is General Jacques Leclerc and his staff in charge of military operations in Indochina. They cross a bridge under enemy fire. Accompanying them is French Overseas Minister Moutet, sent to Indochina to report on the rebellion to the cabinet in Paris. A clean-cut victory must be won, said Monsieur Moutet, before independence negotiations can be resumed. The wrecking of the Pasteur Institute, leading hospital in Hanoi, is a major act of vandalism. Even the bust of the immortal Pasteur is a casualty. During the bitter warfare, it is estimated that the Vietnamese have nearly 100,000 under arms, and the French have called all regulars for colonial service as the situation becomes more tense. Evidence that Jap equipment is being used is this Nip helmet. France digs in for a colonial struggle that may be long and costly.
Georgia's Battle of the Governors continues with the two remaining contestants, M.E. Thompson and Herman Talmadge, struggling for supremacy. Asking the state assembly to conform to the Georgia Democratic Party platform, Talmadge lays down a sweeping challenge to his opponents.
After completion of this duty, if the lieutenant governor will resign, your governor will resign. The Speaker of the House of Representatives will assume executive authority. I will meet any candidate for the governorship of Georgia in a Democratic white primary to let the white people of Georgia determine who is their choice for governor.
Outside the gubernatorial offices, several thousand Atlantans gathered to witness a demonstration by university students demanding Talmadge's resignation. Condemning violence, the jeering students in protest hanged Talmadge in effigy. Bright red suspenders symbolize the white supremacy politics of Talmadge followers. The student delegation is orderly, and after reading resolutions and sending a committee to confer with Talmadge, it posts a significant placard.
Returning from Mexico, President Truman stops at Waco, Texas, where he receives an honorary degree of Doctor of Laws from Baylor University and takes a strong stand on international trade.
We are the giants of the economic world. Whether we like it or not, the future pattern of economic relations depends upon us. The world is waiting and watching to see what we shall do. The choice is ours. We can lead the nations to economic peace, or we can plunge them into economic war. There must be no question as to our course. We must not go through the 30s again.
Here, Joe Tinker of the famed Tinker to Evers to Chance Baseball Combine looks over the situation at Joe Stripp's baseball school. Ben Cantwell of the Braves lends a hand, and former Pirate Jimmy Brown shows future hopefuls how to slide. But school days are arduous. The lads need their vitamins, so local citrus beauties are right on hand with much-needed nourishment. Magic, isn't it? Pretty girls, oranges. Ah, what a tough life, this baseball. She's striking. The sporting scene shifts, this time to France, for a slightly daffy, high-stepping form of boxing the French call savate. It's boxing with a kick to it. Somebody must have got the idea from watching a kangaroo in action. Anyway, if you're not careful, you might say the wrong thing and put your foot in it. Or somebody's foot. The tall one, whose name is Alphonse, or is it Gaston, is sort of a Fred Astaire, Gene Tunney in the ballet style. The shorter one has no kick coming, but he's mighty adept with his hands. He's defeated, even though he knows his ropes. At Turner's Arena in Washington is Primo Carnera, the Prime, who's in the prime. The one-time Goliath of fisticuff fame, a Johnny-come-lately in the wrestling ring, is on the same card with one Don Lee. Mr. Lee puts the bite on Primo, and the Prime takes a fast grab at Mr. Lee's coiffure. Primo devises a new hold, namely the surly with the fringe on the bottom. It's effective with or without music and a grunt thrown in for extra measure. It's fun, too, depending on who's on top. One good bite deserves another, but then it's time to clear the table and get ready for the next course. Dessert, maybe. Next, we have a bit of landscaping with heaping portions of Lee on canvas. It may not be art, but it has a surrealistic touch, and Lee does not dally. A fine point of etiquette is settled to the satisfaction of all parties except Lee, who looks for a way out and finds it. The fans say, "Come back!" and being obliging, Mr. Lee comes back. But then he has the bright thought maybe it's safer out. In some parts of our land, spring is rampant, and so are the New York Giants. Mel Ott calls the boys together out in Phoenix for a bit of warming up in the Arizona sun. Out here where old times like last year are forgotten, Johnny Mize is one reason, and another is Bill Voiselle, why Giant Profits are viewing prospects for the coming season with confidence. Cliff Hartung, prize rookie, is expected to do big things for the Polo Grounds Gladiators this coming season. Walker Cooper will be behind the plate when they cry play ball. But first comes spring training. That's a big item now in Arizona, and way down south of South in Havana, Cuba, where Branch Rickey and Leo DeRocha look over the Dodger prospects. Lippy isn't talking much these days, content to size up his pitching staff, which includes Kirby Higby as usual. Most of the infield berths are filled with all-star Pee Wee Reese, assured of his old spot at short. Pete Reeser will be out on the field pulling him down, along with Dixie Walker, busy now divulging the secret of his success. Yes, sir, them bums is big news. Driving snow fails to deter Philadelphia's mummers from their 46th parade ushering in the new year. As usual, the 24 competing clubs spare neither pains nor expense to produce gorgeous exhibits, many costing as high as $25,000. They march gaily in sub-freezing temperatures during the winter's worst storm, which blanketed the entire East Coast. Among the many comedy skits are veterans who give their own version of the 5220 Club. Admiral Byrd's expedition to the Antarctic is the theme for one of the most elaborate floats. And they don't forget John L. Lewis when satire is being handed out. And the good old stock market gets its share of ribbing. For once, you win. It's the age of wristwatch radios, and it's none other than that indestructible Dick Tracy who's doing something about one of those repulsive characters. But don't forget, it's all done with that wristwatch radio.
This beehive of activity is the warehouse of the Bubblegum King at McAllen, Texas. The sole importer of this fascinating commodity, made from latex in Mexican factories working night and day, is Andrew J. Paris, and there she blows. His office staff knows the rules of the game, too, and are expert in the inflationary art. Catering to his biggest market, Paris gives for free at a schoolhouse where bedlam mingles with the sibilant sizzling of bubblers blowing blubber bubbles with their gubble bums. Gee, I guess I'm stuck with it myself. Paris does it double. Even Shakespeare was probably thinking of this when he said, bubble, bubble, toil and trouble. But we'll bet Macbeth couldn't compete with Sister here.
Far removed from the swashbuckling black shirts of the Hitler regime is this new method of voice cultivation practiced by these German actors. A milestone on the road to the applause of an appreciative audience is an acrobatic demonstration of Lieder. They begin with laughing exercises based on an aria from the opera Tosca. Hold your breath. Once more, a deep breath, please. Let's try it. Sometimes it sounds like a seal barking, but it's serious and all for art. Now let's try it on a high note. A snail, you say? No, no, a little stove which cooks ever so slowly. On the outside, it looks like a swan. But on the inside, well, it could be used for almost anything. Lovely for used razor blades or dunking Junior. Voila, a ballet moving with precision. But no, it is a cutting trick. Mademoiselle prepares for a stroll, perhaps? But no, again the illusion. It keeps the smoke out of the eyes. Alone at midnight, this is the end. There is nothing to live for. But no, time has not run out.